There is a strange thing happening around Tesla's next cheap electric car, and most people may be looking at it from the wrong angle. At first glance, the so-called Model 2, now being whispered about under the internal name NV9, looks like the car Tesla fans have been waiting for. A smaller Tesla, a lower price, a wider audience, and finally a way for people who could never afford a Model Y or Model 3 to enter the brand. That sounds like a celebration, and that is exactly how many channels will probably treat it. They will talk about the sticker price, the compact size, the promise of mass adoption, and the idea that Tesla is returning to its original mission. But the real question may not be how cheap this car is when someone signs the papers. The real question is what the owner may continue paying after the car is already sitting in the driveway. That is where the story starts to become more complicated, because a cheap Tesla does not automatically mean a cheap ownership experience. A lower entry price can be powerful, but it can also work like a door that opens into a much larger system. The NV9 may not simply be designed to sell a car. It may be designed to bring millions of new people into Tesla's paid software world. The vehicle itself could be the beginning, not the full product. Once the driver gets used to the screen, the connected features, the driver assistance tools, the AI assistant, the updates, and the convenience of having everything inside one ecosystem, the real business begins. And that changes the way this car should be understood from the very start. The easiest way to understand this is by looking at what happened with streaming services like Netflix. At the beginning, the offer felt almost impossible to refuse. A low monthly price, a huge library, no need to buy discs, and no need to pay for cable. Millions of people entered because the cost felt small enough to ignore. But little by little, the monthly price went up. The password rules changed, extra plans appeared, and canceling started to feel harder because the service had become part of everyday life. The customer did not feel trapped on day one. The customer became attached first, and only later realized the full cost of staying inside the system. That same logic may be moving from the living room to the garage. A Tesla NV9, priced near the lower end of the market, could look like the perfect answer to cheaper Chinese EVs, aging gas cars, and buyers who want an electric vehicle without spending luxury car money. But if the car is built around software subscriptions, autonomous driving access, premium connectivity, AI features, and future paid upgrades, then the purchase price becomes only one part of the equation. The vehicle may arrive as the affordable Tesla people requested, while quietly making the owner more dependent on features that are billed month after month. In that case, the cheapest Tesla may become the most important gateway Tesla has ever built. Not because it makes less money up front, but because it can connect far more people to services that never stop charging. This is why the NV9 deserves a colder look than the usual excitement around a budget Tesla. The concern is not that a cheaper electric car is bad, because a lower-cost EV could genuinely help many buyers leave gasoline behind. The concern is that the car may be designed to feel affordable at the moment of purchase, while becoming more expensive through the habits it creates afterward. Tesla would not need every buyer to pay for everything on day one. It would only need them to enter, drive, adapt, and slowly see paid features as normal parts of the experience. That is the hidden tension behind this car. It may be sold as the people's Tesla, but it could also become the cleanest version yet of a car built around recurring revenue. The bigger clue does not come from a dramatic announcement, a polished teaser, or a carefully staged post from Elon Musk. It comes from the supply chain, and that is usually where the real story begins before the public is supposed to notice it. In April 2026, Reuters reported that Tesla was working on a completely new compact SUV, and the important detail was not just the existence of the project. The important detail was that 4 sources said suppliers had already been contacted to discuss manufacturing processes and technical specifications. That changes the weight of the rumor. A simple idea can disappear overnight, but once suppliers are being approached, the project starts leaving fingerprints outside the company. That is why the NV9 feels different from the usual cycle of Tesla speculation. For years, people have heard promises, rumors, denials, leaked timelines, cancelled plans, revived plans, and names that change before the car even exists. But suppliers are not paid to dream. They work with tooling, materials, capacity planning, production windows, factory processes, and parts that need to fit inside a real vehicle. When a company starts talking to suppliers about how something will be built, the discussion is no longer just about a future product on a presentation slide. It becomes a practical question of how to make it repeatable, scalable, and cheap enough to survive mass production. Tesla China denied the report, and that denial will make many people pause. On the surface, that seems like a strong response, because a direct denial sounds final. But Tesla has a history of moving in a way that makes public statements harder to read. There have been moments when something was denied, dismissed, or treated as unlikely, only for official paperwork, registration data, or supply chain movement to point in another direction shortly after. The Cybertruck situation in China is a useful example. The company denied certain market plans, but days later, the vehicle appeared in official registration activity. That does not prove every denial is false, but it does show why the denial alone cannot be treated as the end of the story. This is especially true because modern car development does not run on tweets. It runs on purchase orders, supplier meetings, factory preparation, regulatory targets, cost limits, battery contracts, and production math. A public statement can be short, vague, or strategically careful, but the supply chain has to be specific. A supplier needs to know dimensions, materials, tolerances, expected volume, manufacturing complexity, delivery schedules, and whether a part is being designed for a low-volume experiment or a serious production vehicle. That is why the supplier list matters more than the public relations language. If the NV9 is moving through that network, then the car is already becoming more than a rumor. And this matters because the type of suppliers involved can reveal what Tesla may really be building. A cheap compact SUV for regular buyers would require one kind of cost structure, but a vehicle designed to feed a larger autonomous and subscription-based ecosystem would require a different kind of thinking. The parts, the platform, the battery choice, the software hardware, and even the size of the car can expose the strategy before Tesla says it out loud. So the real proof may not be in a launch event, and it may not be in what the company confirms or denies. It may be hidden in the industrial machine that has to move first, quietly, long before the public sees the car. The specifications make the NV9 even more revealing, because they do not point to a car designed only to look attractive in a showroom. They point to a vehicle shaped by cost, regulation, fleet use, and high-volume deployment. A length of around 4.28 meters may sound like a random compact SUV measurement, but in the automotive world, numbers like that are rarely random. A car in this size range can fit better into crowded European cities, qualify more easily for certain incentive structures, and remain practical enough for China, where compact electric crossovers are already fighting for space in a brutal market. Tesla would not be choosing this footprint just because it looks neat. It would be choosing it because the size helps the car work across several markets at once. The estimated weight of around 1.5 tons also says a lot. For an electric vehicle, that is relatively lean, especially when compared with larger Teslas that carry bigger battery packs, more motors, and heavier bodies. A lighter car needs less energy to move, less battery to reach acceptable range, and less material to build at scale. That points toward a very deliberate cost strategy, where Tesla tries to avoid wasting money on capacity the target buyer may not need. It also points toward a battery chemistry that is cheaper, durable, and easier to justify in a high-volume vehicle. This is where LFP starts to make sense, especially if the pack uses a blade-style format that helps with packaging, safety, and manufacturing efficiency. The single-motor rear-wheel drive layout follows the same logic. It may not sound exciting next to dual-motor performance trims, but excitement is not the center of this project. A single motor means fewer parts, lower production cost, less complexity, and better efficiency for everyday use. Rear-wheel drive also keeps the vehicle simple, while still giving it the driving feel Tesla customers expect. This kind of powertrain is not built to impress someone at a drag strip. It is built to survive thousands of daily trips, long hours of operation, and repeated use in city traffic without turning the vehicle into an expensive machine to maintain or produce. That is why the fleet angle becomes hard to ignore. A compact body, low weight, simple drivetrain, and practical battery layout are exactly the kind of choices a company would make if it wanted the car to work not only for private buyers, but also for ride-hailing, delivery, corporate fleets, rental companies, and eventually autonomous networks. In that world, beauty is secondary. What matters is cost per mile, uptime, range consistency, cabin durability, charging speed, software control, and how easily thousands of units can be managed at once. The NV9 may look like a cheaper family crossover to the public, but under the surface, its numbers suggest something more industrial. The most interesting part is how closely this logic appears to connect with the Cybercab. If the NV9 uses a powertrain similar to the robotaxi platform already being tested or deployed in Texas, then it may not be a separate product in the way people normally imagine. It may be the human drivable version of a broader autonomous platform. That would allow Tesla to spread development costs across more than one vehicle, gather more real-world data, and build a car that can serve regular drivers today while preparing for a driverless network tomorrow. So the dimensions, weight, and motor choice are not just technical details. They may be the clearest signal yet that Tesla is not simply building an affordable car, but a mass-market tool designed for a much larger transportation system. That larger transportation system is where the NV9 stops looking like a normal car and starts looking like infrastructure. This is the part many buyers may miss, because the vehicle will probably arrive with familiar language: affordable, compact, efficient, practical, and built for the next wave of electric adoption. But behind those simple words, Tesla may be preparing something much bigger than another entry-level model. The company has spent years telling the market that autonomy is the real prize, not just electric car sales. So if the NV9 is designed to be driven by humans today, while also feeding an autonomous network tomorrow, then the buyer is not just purchasing transportation. The buyer is helping finance the equipment Tesla needs for a much wider system. This becomes more important when looking back at what happened in 2024. Elon Musk moved away from the original idea of a cheap electric car made mainly for human drivers, because the argument was that autonomous vehicles would make that kind of product less important. In that view, building a low-cost EV for someone to personally drive every day did not make as much sense if robotaxis were supposed to change transportation completely. The message was clear. The future was not about everyone owning a cheaper car, but about cars driving themselves and earning money inside a network. That is why the return of a low-cost Tesla now feels less like a simple reversal and more like a redesigned strategy. The pressure around Tesla's sales makes that strategy easier to understand. After years of rapid growth, deliveries became more difficult to defend. Tesla sold around 1.81 million vehicles in 2023, then fell to about 1.636 million in 2025, and the first quarter of 2026 came in below expectations. That kind of slowdown changes the conversation inside any car company, even one built around big promises. A lower-priced vehicle can bring volume back, but Tesla does not need it to be only a cheaper Model Y. It can use the NV9 as a bridge between old Tesla and new Tesla. Still a car people can buy and drive, but also a node in a software, data, and autonomy network that keeps growing after the sale. That is where the dual approach becomes so powerful. On one side, the NV9 can be sold to regular drivers who want an affordable EV with the Tesla badge. On the other side, every unit on the road becomes another sensor platform, another software endpoint, and another opportunity to sell full self-driving as a subscription. If the owner pays for FSD, that driver is not just using a feature. That owner is helping train, validate, and normalize Tesla's autonomous system in the real world. The strange part is that the customer pays for the car, pays for the software, accepts the updates, drives the miles, and the company receives both recurring revenue and valuable data from the same machine. In that sense, the NV9 could turn ordinary owners into something closer to small franchise operators, even if they never signed up for that label. They buy the hardware, keep it charged, maintain it, insure it, park it, and drive it through the exact streets Tesla needs to understand better. Tesla collects software revenue, fleet behavior, edge cases, mapping improvements, camera data, and usage patterns that can strengthen the network over time. This does not mean every buyer will be forced into autonomy, and it does not mean the car has no value without subscriptions. But it does mean the cheapest Tesla may carry a purpose far beyond personal transportation. It may be designed as the most scalable way to place Tesla's autonomous infrastructure into millions of private garages. That same infrastructure does not stop with driving, because Tesla's software strategy is now beginning to stretch into artificial intelligence in a much broader way. The arrival of Grok inside Tesla vehicles may look like a simple convenience feature at first, something drivers can talk to while they sit behind the wheel. But this kind of assistant is not just another button on the screen. It is a new layer between the driver and the car, a layer that can answer questions, explain settings, handle requests, create a more personal experience, and make the vehicle feel less like a machine and more like a connected digital space. Once that happens, the car becomes part of a much larger AI ecosystem. Right now, that ecosystem is still limited by price. Grok inside a Tesla makes the most sense in cars that already cost far more than a basic, compact vehicle. If someone needs to spend around $37,000 or more just to enter that world, the number of users grows more slowly. But if the NV9 arrives close to the $25,000 range, the barrier drops sharply. Suddenly, Tesla is not only selling a cheaper electric car, it is opening the front door of XAI to a much wider audience of drivers, passengers, families, commuters, gig workers, fleet operators, and first-time EV buyers who may never have considered a more expensive Tesla before. That matters because artificial intelligence improves through use, feedback, patterns, corrections, and repeated interaction. The more people talk to Grok in real situations, the more chances the system has to understand how drivers ask questions, what they need while driving, what confuses them, what features they use most, and how a car-based assistant should behave differently from a phone assistant or a home speaker. A driver stuck in traffic, a parent looking for a charging stop, a delivery worker planning a route, or a tourist asking about nearby places all create different kinds of data. The NV9 could multiply those interactions by lowering the cost of entry. This creates a flywheel, and that is where the business model becomes more interesting. More affordable Teslas could bring more users into Grok. More users could generate more interaction data. More data could make Grok better inside the car. A better Grok could make Tesla's software subscriptions feel more useful. And once a subscription feels more useful, the company gains more pricing power. The driver may begin with curiosity, then convenience, then habit. The feature that once looked optional starts to feel like part of the car's personality, and that is exactly how software becomes sticky. People do not pay only because a feature exists. They pay because removing it makes the product feel worse. The unusual part is that this flywheel may benefit two companies at once: Tesla and XAI, both tied to the same public figure and the same larger vision of AI-driven products. Full self-driving can gather road behavior and sell autonomy as a monthly service, while Grok can gather human interaction and sell intelligence as part of the connected vehicle experience. The NV9 then becomes more than an affordable EV and more than a possible robo-taxi cousin. It becomes a distribution machine. Every cheaper Tesla placed on the road could carry cameras, software, connectivity, FSD potential, and an AI assistant that keeps learning from daily life. That is why the real value of this car may not sit only in the battery pack, the motor, or the body. It may sit in the data loop that begins the moment a new owner turns it on. This is where the Netflix comparison becomes harder to ignore, because the cheapest Tesla may not be cheap in the way people expect. A low sticker price creates excitement because it gives buyers a number they can understand immediately. If the NV9 appears around $25,000 to $27,000, it will look like a direct attack on affordable gas cars, used EVs, and compact electric crossovers from China, Korea, and Europe.